Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahawashi, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahawashi, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahawashi, Bahasar Kodash. I want to give double honor to our elder apostles and elder bishops of the great millstone well. Peace and blessings, health and wellness to the house of David the elect. I was a high spirit, we in Judah. And today I want to go into a topic. So look, today I want to go into a topic entitled Raising Sons Without Fathers is an Act of Terror. Isaiah 3 and 12 was an act of fucking terror. So I had the spirit on me yesterday, me being from Jackson, Mississippi, all right? I had the spirit on me to look up crime in Jackson, Mississippi, all right? Crime, because ever since the pandemic, all right, the crime rocketed, the crime rate more than quadrupled. We were from around 30 deaths a year to like 150 deaths a year, especially year 2021. There was like 156 murders, all right? 156 murders. The thing about it, the capital city of Jackson only has like 150,000 people. So per capita, Jackson's crime rate has surpassed Chicago, Atlanta, everybody per capita. So you may see, how can they surpass Chicago? Because Chicago drop about 700 bodies a year. But Chicago has, to my recollection, 2.8 million people. Whereas Jackson has 150,000 people. So per capita, it's more bodies dropping in Jackson than Chicago. I think the governor said it was 3 times the amount, all right, per capita. So I looked on like different news clips of Jackson, Mississippi, and how people from different news agencies came down here to sort of talk to a lot of mothers who were victims. Their sons were victims. But I couldn't help but notice that it was swarms of single mothers. Swarms of single mothers grieving over their son. And even the police would be like, and the woman would be like, the police would tell her, you know, go do your own investigation. Or the police would be like, yeah, your son wasn't just a saint. You know what I mean? Basically, he was saying he was a nigga. But you know, a mother wouldn't want to hear that. But the point is, all right, that it was swarms of women coming into the council room to talk to the news anchor to explain their grief, not only about the son who was their son who was murdered, but also his case has never been resolved because basically the Jackson police, they're understaffed, and so it's a lot of unresolved murders in Mississippi. All right, but I just can't help but notice how many single mothers came in. All right, and Jackson, Mississippi is a liberal Democratic state. I'm sorry, it's not a Democratic state, it's a Republican state. But the city of Jackson is a Democratic city. And the Democratic cities, all right, liberal Democratic cities, a lot of aid goes into single mothers. Because off a false narrative, going back to the 60s, the welfare state, where women need financial assistance to raise their single children, when really it was an incentive to have children without a father in the household. All right, and you synchronize that with a culture, a street culture that engineered us to be niggas. All right, now you always have a choice for the most part, but you have a culture where it's cool and incentivized to be a nigga. All right, a lot of jakes know their dad, or they know who their dad is, but they weren't raised by him. And in Jackson, Mississippi, there seems to be a single mother epidemic, man. All right, and you can look up the studies that show the stats on men being raised without their fathers and how they're more likely to be incarcerated, and daughters being raised without their fathers, how they're most likely to have mental instability, all right, and have premature pregnancies. But that's an act of terror, all right, to have whole communities where women are basically incentivized to not have their dad, and that produces animals. Not every single time, but that produces animals. That's an act of terror to have abortion clinics, man. Don't you know that's not natural to be raised without your father? It's so common in the Southern Kingdom communities, so-called communities, in the neighborhoods. It's so second nature to not have your dad, man. And that produces animals. It produces a wild, undisciplined nigga. Because it says in Isaiah 3 and 12, as for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. All right? Who are the children? Esau, Edom. So he systemically oppresses us. But then our women rule over us. And this is the result. Any inner city, in most cases, it's the woman who rules over you. Now, Jake does have his dad a lot of times, but a lot of times they don't. Because they sexually liberated women. So you have the welfare state, which subsidizes and finances women who don't have the man with them. But then you have women's sexual liberation. You can basically fuck whoever you want to fuck. And now sex is the culture. Sex without building a family is the culture. And if you hear women talk about what they look for in a man, it has nothing to do with character. It has nothing to do with his father-like quality. It has nothing to do with that, man. And Eve know that shit. All right? Eve know that shit. And they have to express that because they got this single mother victimhood narrative. And they have black men are not there, so-called black men are not there for their children narrative. But like Eve, look who Eve choosing, man. That's an act of terror to have all these young men raised without their father. All right? The traps are here. So you gotta be raised. The traps are here for the demise of your Israelite son. The traps are set up. But it's up to the father to raise you and to dominate you and to navigate you around these traps. All right? But we would never, it's not, the Most High did not set up the Israelite family to be just raised by your mother. That's actually a curse. It's actually a curse, man. It's a curse. You raised by a nourisher. Here you are, 17, 18, raised by a nourisher. Most Jakes get gunned down in the streets. But what the hell were you doing in the streets? In this state, in this city, all right? If you ain't going to work and going home, you pretty much risking your life. If you in school, if you ain't on the after school program, if you ain't playing sports, and you just out there, you asking for trouble, all right? You got to be a part of shit down here, man. Unless you're a Jake that just don't go outside, all right? But even when you become an adult, like nigga, if you ain't going to work and going home, you asking for it, you know? You gotta have a structure out here, you know? So I know there's a correlating outcome, a correlating situation. These cats get gunned down in the streets, all right? Now some Jakes on paper is innocent bystander, he got caught up in some whatever, but as the scripture says, whoever died being innocent. Now Deuteronomy tells you Jake will have an evil eye towards each other, and that's manifested here, bro. But the certain things you can point at, and this part of the curses too, it is swarms of women raising Jake. I remember Common said in one of his verses on the corner with Scarface, and he said the ghetto's been bastardized by those who capitalize. And that's facts. The ghetto's been bastardized. Another situation in Jackson, besides the water crisis, there's nothing to do here. All right, there's no mall in Jackson. There's virtually no movie theater, you know. There's no events for the little ones. So the environment is fucked up. It's a food desert. You know, you live in the hood, there's no quality food. And there's a correlation between processed food and crime. All right? And there's other things that I could mention. I was talking to the elder brother, Yashamai, and he was like, they start off with crime. They start the sons off young because they put them on medication for like ADHD. All right? And they get you hooked on certain, they get you conditioned to be hooked on certain drugs. And I thought about it. I grew up with a certain Jake that was on medication for that. Now he's in jail for murder. All right? You know, because I think it is a drug. You know? These jakes are on different type of pills that jakes weren't on 20 years ago, but you grew up getting conditioned for that shit. Brother broke it down to him and I believe him. You grew up being raised on pills, these ADHD pills, man. It was targeted at jake. It tranquilizes you. So this sort of conditions you to start to depend on drugs to monitor, to control your behavior. All right? But Jake out here, man. You see? But that's an act of terror against our people to have systems where you could just incentivize women to raise sons and daughters without a father. That's an act of terror, and it's too fucking normal. It's an act of terror. Abortion is an act of terror against our people. All right? Sex being a part of sex is a part of the culture. It has been extracted as an entity of itself without building a family. That's an act of terror. Our women not being reserved for one Israelite man. Hey man, that's an act of terror. You got the Cardi B's and the Glorillas, you know? That's harlot culture, nigga. Fuck a nigga, but he can eat your P-U-S-S-Y. F a nigga, but he can eat your A-S-S. F a nigga, I just want his money. Nigga, that's harlot culture, nigga. But they all gonna get pregnant and have little bastards. Alright? Our woman should never have been sexually liberated. What the fuck? It says a woman be getting the possession. If you hear women's standards on what they look for from men, it's primitive. It's either money or sex. Alright? And then they get pregnant by anonymous niggas. And now they have a victim mentality. But you were the one that got sexually liberated. So, I mean, there's other factors that play into this crime, but this is a single mother culture. Incentivized by the devil. Hey, but you know, as for my people, children are the oppressors, and women rule over them. All right. Deuteronomy 28. It says the Israelite man will have an evil eye towards each other. All right. It tells you that our people made a covenant with death, and nigger culture dominates the city, just like any city is dominated by nigger culture, whether you're your dad or not. A lot of jakes, they had a father, but they're enticed by street culture. They're enticed by nigger culture. In your environment, if you don't react like a nigga, people think, hey, they might test you. If you don't carry yourself like a nigga, you know, they might take you for a pushover. It's horrible, but it's true in a lot of cases. You know? Nigger culture. But with that, I hope you brothers and sisters were edified. Till the next time, shalom.